I'm a naturopathic doctor with 20 years in women's hormonal health, and menopause belly has almost nothing to do with what you're eating. I know that's not what you've been told, but the real driver is something most conventional doctors never test for. And once you know what it is, you'll understand why diet and exercise alone haven't been moving the needle. If that lands for you, hit that like button. Let's get into it. Here's what's actually happening. As estrogen declines during perimenopause, the body changes where it stores fat and it starts preferring the abdomen. This isn't a willpower problem. It's a metabolic shift driven by hormones. At the same time, declining estrogen makes your cells more resistant to insulin. So the same meal that your body handled easily at 38 is now being stored as fat at 48. You didn't change, your hormonal environment did. And here's the part that really trips people up the most. The harder you push, the more cardio you do, more restriction, the worse it can get, because chronic dieting and over-exercising are physical stressors. And stress has its own hormonal consequence. Your body runs on a 24-hour internal clock. Most women going through this transition have a disrupted one. Late nights, blue light exposure, inconsistent wake times, not enough natural morning light. Here's why that matters for menopause belly specifically. Your circadian rhythm controls cortisol timing. Cortisol is supposed to peak in the morning and taper off in the evening. When that rhythm is disrupted, cortisol peaks at the wrong times, and chronically elevated cortisol directly drives abdominal fat storage. I tell every patient dealing with menopause belly, get outside within 30 minutes of waking up. No sunglasses, natural light in your eyes, even 10 minutes. It's one of the lowest cost, highest impact things you can do that reset your cortisol curve, and it has nothing to do with your diet. Now, here's what almost no one talks about. When estrogen drops in menopause, your adrenal glands are supposed to pick up some of the slack, producing a small amount of estrogen precursors to help buffer the transition. But if your adrenals are already exhausted from years of chronic stress, poor sleep, and blood sugar swings, they can't do that job. The result? The hormonal drop feels more severe, cortisol stays dysregulated, and the belly fat becomes more stubborn. This is why two women can go through the same hormonal transition and have completely different experiences. It's not luck, it's adrenal reserve. I had a patient, let's call her Lisa, who was eating clean, doing Pilates 4 days a week, and still gaining around her middle section. When we ran a full cortisol panel and looked at her adrenal function, the picture became very clear. Her adrenals were running on empty. The belly wasn't a food problem, it was a stress physiology problem. And if you want help actually mapping out what's addressing your menopause belly, whether it's cortisol, adrenal function, insulin resistance, or all three, check the description in the pinned comment below. I've put together resources on exactly this. So, what does work? A few things consistently make a difference in my practice for my patients. Protein at every meal, not to be trendy, but because protein supports muscle mass, which directly improves insulin sensitivity. And here's what most people miss. As estrogen drops, your body actually becomes worse at using amino acids. So you need more protein, not less, to maintain the muscle that keeps your metabolism working. Strength training over endless cardio. Muscle is metabolically active tissue that changes how your body handles glucose. 1 hour of cardio burns calories during that hour. 1 hour of strength training changes your metabolism for 2 days. This is why I see women spending an hour on the treadmill and wondering why the belly isn't moving. The problem isn't the effort. It's the wrong tool for the job. Sleep is a non-negotiable, not a luxury. Poor sleep spikes cortisol and makes every other intervention less effective. And in menopause, sleep is already harder. You've got hot flashes, temperature regulation is off, melatonin production drops. So if you're not aggressively protecting your sleep with blackout curtains, consistent bedtimes, magnesium support, nothing else is going to stick. And adrenal support, whether that's adaptogenic herbs, restoring your circadian rhythm, or simply removing the chronic stressors that are draining your system because you can't out-diet a cortisol problem. Now, here's something else that matters. Your liver. As estrogen drops, your body's ability to metabolize and clear excess estrogen changes. If your liver isn't working optimally, you end up with this weird situation where you have low circulating estrogens, but your tissues are still responding like they have too much. Supporting liver function through bitter herbs, reducing processed foods, staying hydrated is part of fixing menopause belly that most people never address. And testing matters. A full metabolic panel, fasting insulin levels, cortisol patterns throughout the day, and thyroid function. Because sometimes what looks like menopause belly is actually undiagnosed thyroid decline or blood sugar dysregulation or adrenal exhaustion. You can't fix what you don't measure. Here's something that frustrates women the most, the timeline. When you're 30 and you cut calories, that result shows usually in like 2 to 3 weeks. When you're 50 and you fix your cortisol, your insulin sensitivity, and your sleep, it takes about 8 to 12 weeks to see real shifts. This isn't because you're older or broken. It's because you're rebuilding metabolic pathways that have been dysregulated for years. And this is why tracking matters, not just the scale. Take measurements, notice how your clothes fit, track your energy and your sleep quality. The scale might not move for 6 weeks, but your waist measurements might drop 2 inches. The most common mistake I see is focusing only on diet. Women will eat perfectly clean, count every calorie, eliminate every food, and the menopause belly doesn't budge because diet alone can't fix a cortisol problem or rebuild muscle or reset circadian rhythm. Menopause belly requires a multi-pronged approach, and the mistake that kills results most is expecting to out-exercise a bad cortisol pattern. You can't burn your way out of a stress physiology problem. You can only fix the stress physiology. Menopause belly is not a character flaw. It's a hormonal and metabolic shift that requires a different approach, not a harder one. And once you understand the actual mechanism, everything you do becomes more targeted and more effective. If this helped you understand what's actually going on in your body, share this video with a woman in your life who's been blaming herself for something that has never been her fault to begin with. And if you want to go deeper on how perimenopausal hormone changes affect your energy, your mood, and your weight, I made a video on that next.